Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas Michaud. Welcome to Real Guitar Success Live. This is where I'm going to do my best to answer all your guitar-related questions, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll start off with questions that were pre-submitted, and then I'll go to the chat and answer questions. If you're on the call and you see or you hear a question that I've answered and you want to ask a related question, feel free to enter it in the chat. If you could start the chat with the word question or even a big Q. I just can't read every comment and figure out which one's a question at a time. So I likely will miss your question if you don't start with the word question or something. I can't see it among all the comments. At the end, as usual, I will do a drawing. Oh, actually, I'm going to postpone the drawing and do it afterwards. Something's wrong with the software and it won't produce the contestants. I'll figure it out. But for now, I'll go ahead and start answering your questions. Let's get a guitar in hand. There we go. I am sure I'm going to need it. So the first question for today. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I could get taller. That's a little, yeah, there we go. I want to make sure you guys can see my guitar. For John Denver's Country Road, you offer a strumming pattern. It's down, down, up, down, up, down, up. And an extra option to add some variety or color to the pattern, hitting higher strings and lower strings, which adds more life. Could you please show, very slowly, how to strum the D chord using this pattern? Excuse me. So I can see your fingers move across the strings. Christine. So first of all, she's, I don't remember that particular lesson, the John Denver lesson, but I know she's talking about down, down, up, down, up, down, up. And that's a good basic beginning strum. A way to kind of up that is to varying whether you're hitting the low and the high string. So here's the basic, and here's the variety. See, when you're going faster, it adds a kind of a motion to it and makes it a little more interesting. And then you can do it exaggerated, just really hitting the low and the very high, or just subtle. Now, she's asking about a very clear, specific pattern. I want to start by saying that's... I teach a specific when to hit low and when to hit high for beginners, but that's not really what guitar players are doing. First of all, they're varying it. So they're not just hitting low all the time. And there's not one pattern that is the pattern. The best way to do this is to just experiment. But to give somebody something to start, here's one possible pattern. Low, high, high. So I'm hitting the low string and the high. That's beats. That's 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So I did bass, quarter note, so it would be a down, down, up on the high, down, up on the low, and a down, up on the high. That's one possible pattern. It creates a certain feeling. Down, down, up high, down, up low, down, up high. Okay, now I would challenge you to do that and then experiment with down, high, down, up, down, high, down, up, down. It's just another variation. And in fact, if I were playing the song, I'd probably mix several throughout the song. It's got to start somewhere, I get that. And just don't get stuck there. Okay, what is the best way to learn to play chords up and down the neck besides using bar chords? Our scale, oh, okay, that's two questions. What's the best way to learn chords? So that's a good question. Um, let me see if I could draw on my experience. Well, first of all, it's when you say besides using bar chords, that threw me for a minute because I can't really imagine going up and down the neck without using bar chords. That's just not in my experience. I have seen jazz players who play a lot of kind of partial chords up and down the guitar neck, and it works in certain situations because they're not playing the whole chord. It works when they're playing with other bands. For example, when they're playing a chord form and it doesn't include the root of the chord, it would sound funny by itself, but in a band, the bass player is playing the root or the keyboard player, so it's covered. They don't need to. So I would say, from my point of view, you really want to learn bar chords to play up and down the neck. Then, that said, one good approach is to kind of follow this cage system and play the same chord up and down the neck. So cage, C-A-G-E-D, is just initials that make the word cage, but they're initials for maybe I'll call them the 5 most used keys for guitar players. C is the star, D. So a C, we'll start with C. You can play the C several places up the neck. Let's see, C, oh yeah, this form. So, of course, I can't give a whole lesson, but I'll give you the idea. You can play the C chord up and down the neck. There it is. Or that's the bar. That's a partial bar. And here's the one I was trying to play. So that's C. C, 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 C. So there's a lot more to that, but you can play every chord pretty much 5 different versions. And that would help you over time by practicing that. Start with one chord. I'd start with C and just work it till you could get up and down the neck playing that. And then go to the C, A and do the same thing. And you'll start seeing that the same forms repeat in different spots. So in the cage system, this is a C chord and it's also a C form. When you play this chord, it's a C chord, but it's an A form. That's because it's an A chord with a bar. Okay. So now I know it's getting more and more complicated. I don't want to turn this into a whole system on using cage and chords. I do have a lesson in, I think, the blog or on Real Guitar Success, and I'll find that and put a link in the show notes. Let's see. Are scales important to learn? That's a good question. Often I get 2 kinds of people. I never want to learn scales, and I get, oh, I've got to start with scales and learn a bunch of scales before I can play anything. Well, the truth is probably somewhere more in between. Scales are useful in several reasons, especially a certain amount of basic scales, but they're not the first thing to learn or the most important thing to learn. Scales do help you to hear the notes and the key. They help you with actual technique, playing the scales. I like to use scales for warming up. And of course, if you're improvising, they're an absolute must. If all you want to do is improvise on the guitar, yes, that's when you start with scales and start with, you know, you're going to learn a lot of scales and practice each of them so that you can get around the whole guitar neck eventually. For most people, if you're learning folk style strumming, they would take a back seat, and I would encourage you to use them as warm-ups and to use scales in where they belong. In other words, as a part of your program and a small part of your program, as opposed to you have to learn scales before you learn anything else or anything like that. Can you use a digital tuner for a ukulele? This is Michael. And is the setting of 440 the same for both uke and guitar? So yes, you can use a digital tuner for ukulele. As a matter of fact, it's very helpful. It's just that the notes are different. It's not the same as guitar. Obviously, it's 4 strings. For the ukulele, that's the first string, which is, well, let me start here. The lowest string is, the 4th string is a C note. No, I'm sorry, is a G note. Then the next string is a C. Then the next string is an E, and then an A. I don't normally play uke, but if I grab one, I can play some chords on it. A couple of things. There are different kind of ukes. So there's a soprano uke, a tenor uke, a baritone uke. They are commonly tuned different. So that was a soprano uke I described, which is a small one. The other thing is there are different tunings for uke. That was the most common tuning, but I've seen people tune them different. I have a friend from Hawaii, and yeah, I saw him tune the uke differently, and I was amazed at what he could play on the uke. That really upped my respect for ukulele when I saw what you could actually do with a ukulele. Before that, I kind of thought of it as a little toy, a very limited instrument. And 440, let's talk about that for a minute. 440 is a standard for music. It basically, if you're on a piano and you say C, it's 440. A is 440. If you change that to, let's say, 442, that's a common one. You've raised everything up a little bit higher. And if you go down a couple, they call them cents, you'd lower everything a little bit lower. The short answer is yes, just keep everything 440. But there are musicians and occasions where they'll change for some reason. I know one of the reasons is if you have a keyboard or a piano and it's slightly out of tune, you change your tuner, the tuner, so it tunes to the piano, and then when you use the tuner for everybody else, everybody's in tune, because it's easier to change the tuner than the piano. But for the most part, everybody just stays with 440. And electronic instruments, they generally just stay there. Next question. How do I know which scale to use to improvise over a backing track? Okay. So that's one of those questions that's not something you can actually answer. That's it's a little bit, it's kind of like asking, how do you drive a car? Well, you know, I could list all the skills involved in driving a car, but that wouldn't actually help you drive a car. You have to learn how to drive a car. So you want to know what scale to improvise. There's not one scale for one backing track necessarily. And if there was, it's not simple to just look and know what scale that would be. You have to decide. And that comes from learning and practicing and experience. That said, I'll give you a short lesson on deciding what scales to play. By the way, when I often give backing tracks, I'll often recommend a scale. But it's by no means the only scale, and that's the thing. There is not one scale for one backing track, and that's all that can work. And it kind of depends. When I improvise, I mix scales. Even I'll play over one particular chord, and I'll change the sound by changing the scale, or even changing to playing an arpeggio. In other words, a chord one note at a time, and I'll mix the two. So again, there's a lot to it. There's not an answer that somebody could give you for that. One of the main things to look for is it in major or minor. So if I'm playing a song, I know intellectually that's minor, but more importantly, I can hear that's a minor sound. That was an A minor. Well, I want a minor scale. Now, I might, depending on the style and what what I want to hear, I might use a minor pentatonic scale, and it's in the key of A, so you can try a A. That'll give you a bluesy rock sound. Or I could use an A minor scale, and that'll give me a more, I don't know, folksy classical, you know, classical and folk music is more built on the major and minor scales. Now, when you throw in modes, you've got a whole bunch of other possibilities. So if I were doing this from scratch, I would stick with major and minor scales to start with. Major and minor, and in modes, the major is called Ionian and the minor is called Aeolian. So if you hear those terms, that's just another name for the major scale, Ionian, and minor scale, Aeolian. And then I would explore pentatonic scales because they tend to work pretty well over a lot of stuff. And again, you're going to get a little different sound when you use pentatonic. It's going to give you more of that country or blues sound. Country, the major pentatonic, bluesy rock, the minor pentatonic. That's where I would start. That would probably last you a lifetime. But if you want to get into full jazz mode and learn all the modes, a whole nother level of learning and years of practice and understanding. Getting over a cold, if you can't tell. I feel pretty good today, but still a little stuffed up. I'm new to RGS. How do I favorite or bookmark a lesson? So RJ was talking about a little star. Just to be clear, it's a heart. And the heart is down below the video, and you'll see a little box that has a little place you can click the heart, and that bookmarks it. And he also mentions that there was a problem with the link for December's guitar sessions. That's been fixed. It was going to November, and it's been fixed. It now goes to December. So that was a couple days ago. This email might be a little, he might already figured that out. But anybody who thinks that's still broken, I want to make sure you know that everything's working fine now. What is the best way to practice chord progressions in the practical way? So this is Dan. And then he goes on to give me what I would consider a very good way to practice chord progressions. So I feel a little silly answering the question with Dan's answer, but maybe I could expand on it a little bit. He says, start by committing progressions to memory. Yes, perfect. For years, I would sit and look at something on music, like a chord progression or some chords, and play them just enough to where I could kind of get from one chord to the other, and then I keep looking at the music. But that is a real rough way to go. Just memorize the thing. Take the time. And, I've learned to do that. And it does take a little effort at first, but it'll save you a lot of trouble. Just memorize the chord progression. And I would start with, the one that you like the best, probably, or that you think you're going to use the most. The one thing I would add to this is start with one progression at a time, and don't just try to memorize all the progressions. It's not going to hurt to practice all the progressions, but you'll see more progress if you work on one at a time and make some progress before going on to the next. And it's a cycle too. You're not going to master one chord progression and then move on and never come back to it. You'll learn one, get fairly good at it, learn another, so you'll get to a handful and then go back and review them and start again and kind of up your game again. The whole thing rises. He says, and then learn songs that coincide with different progressions. Yes, perfect next step. Learn the progression, get to where you can, first of all, you memorize it, then that you can play it, at least with a metronome in time without slowing down, speeding up. That's a big one that I see students do, is they kind of learn it and then they try to apply it and use it in different ways. No, get the progression so you can play it at least at a moderate tempo without slowing down, speeding up. If you're not there, you're going to have a heck of a time adding more complexity. But then, when you can do that, start applying it to some songs. I do have a lesson with some suggested songs. We could go there. I'll put a link in the show notes. And you can look on, what I've done on the internet is I type in a chord progression. I'll call it number. Chord progression 1, 5, 6, 4. I'll just say numbers like that. Songs with chord progression, and I'm amazed at what you can do on the internet now. It'll give you lists of songs with that chord progression, very likely. And then he goes on to list the common progressions: 1, 5, 6, 4, 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, 4, 1, 5. Yes, those are all great progressions and common. The one that, it depends on the music that you like, but a classic is 1, 6, 4, 5. 1, 6, 4. Oh no, yes, that 1, 6, 4, 5. The 6 is a minor, and I didn't see it when I just saw the numbers. I'm used to the Roman numeral system, but the actual numerals, 1645, works fine for most people. And I would add to this, stick with the keys. He's talking about learn them in different keys. Stick with the keys that are most common for guitar. Don't just go through every key. I would say go with the cage keys, C-A-G-E-D. Cage is just a way to memorize C-A-G-E-D, the common keys for guitar, and those are by far the most used. Flat keys, not so much. I mean, in some situations, especially when you're playing with a band, in jazzy kind of stuff, flat keys are used, but not as much for folk style or acoustic guitar or when you're playing by yourself. And it's just, you're not going to get as much bang for the buck as if you just go through the main keys for guitar. And then, of course, once you get good at those keys, it's not that hard to go with flat keys or sharp keys because you just go up or down a half step. So I'm going to go on to the next question. Can you recommend a good guitar tuner app or online? Yes. Online, I have one on the Real Guitar Success website, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And it seems to work pretty good, at least on my computer. It uses a microphone, so it's going to... I have a microphone with my computer, but if you don't have a microphone on your desktop, you might want to use an iPhone or a notepad or a laptop. They all have microphones. So, you know, because I do a lot of stuff, I've always had a microphone on my desktop, but I understand everybody doesn't. For a guitar tuner, let me see what I'm using now. I would just go in the Apple Store and type in guitar tuner, and I've used several, and I can't honestly say that one is better than another. Some are more expensive than others, but they all seem to work just fine. I'll put in the show notes the one I'm using now. I won't pretend it's the best, but I might as well put a link to it in the show notes. I can say it works great, and I haven't tried every tuner, so maybe some of them don't work as well. Okay, so that's all the pre-submitted questions. Let's go over to the new questions, and I'm going to make it bigger so I can see better. Scale is good. Oh, that is big. Ha! Oh, we're good now. Okay, let's start from the top. Hi, Tim. Hey, Gerald. Janet, welcome. Rogelio. Okay. Questions. I should get to the question. Okay. Dan's asking if you could explain strumming patterns with a count rather than down, up, down, up. Dan, if you had a particular strumming pattern, I could do that. But I'll do general now, and I'll look and see if you add something to this. So down, down, up, down, up, down, up. D, we usually just letters. D, D, U, D, U, D, U. When you see just D, that means just down, and then down, up. That corresponds to 1, 2, and when you see the down, up together, one's on the first part of the beat and one's on the second part. Down, up. In numbers, it would be 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and down, down, up, down, up, down, up. So obviously down, down, up is talking about the direction of the pick, and 1, 2, 3, 4 is talking about where it fits in the actual beat. Ideally, I could say both at the same time, but I can't. In writing, you can do that. You can say 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and then put above that D, D up, D up, D up, D up. But when you see down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, it always corresponds to 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And so most people just know that from, who are used to that symbol system. It's newer to me. I mean, I was brought up using 1, 2, 3, 4, but in the last 5 years or so, I've noticed a lot of students like D, D, U, D, U, D, U. Maybe less intimidating. Lady who creates, any recommendations on how to keep up with the monthly lessons? I have been trying since October and can only get through the first and second week. Yes, I have some excellent suggestions. And don't try to do more than 10 minutes on the lesson. So I'll say it another way. Every day, go into the lesson and just spend 10 minutes on the lesson. No more. Stop at 10 minutes. Decide, do I want to come back to this later or not? Is it something I like enough, or it fits into what I want to learn, or it's in my level, it's not too simple or too complicated? Then favorite it. Another name for that is bookmark. It's a little heart, go down the page, and I will put on newer videos, I've been putting a little to show people where to press the heart. But if you just go down the page, you'll see a little box with a thing that says, I think, bookmark and a little heart. When you press that heart, it will save that lesson on another page, and you can find that up top in under bookmarks page. Then check off the lesson. You did it. If you don't like it enough to bookmark it, check it off anyway. 10 minutes, no more. Then, if you have more time to practice, go to your favorites and decide which ones you want to practice more. If you're behind, you didn't do yesterday's lesson, do that for 10 minutes. No more. Decide if you want to favorite. So each day, you're only going to do 10 minutes, so you're completing the lesson. You're getting exposed to the material, and you can make decisions. If you wait, there's a whole bunch of material that you haven't even been exposed to. You don't know if you want to spend more time on it or not. Just do your 10 minutes, and then move on. Bookmark it, then decide if you have time to go back. The idea is on the weekend, if you did all 5 during the week, you've got 2 days with no lessons that you can go to your bookmarks and just spend as long as you want going through the lessons that you want to spend the time on, you think would be the most useful for you. If you missed a day during the week, weekend's a good day to catch up on that too. I hope that helps. And I get that there's a real incentive to say, oh, I didn't get that, I need to spend more time on it. Or I missed a day, I got to go back to the lesson from yesterday and work on that. And now you're just getting more and more behind. Go to today's lesson, do it. Then, if you have time to go back, go back. If you have more time and you want to go to your favorites, then go to your favorites. And Tim has a question. Stage fright. He's asking, how to overcome stage fright. I thought you were asking me how to get stage fright. How to overcome stage fright. How to overcome stage fright? I've never completely overcome stage fright, and I'm not sure that's bad. I've had a lot of performers tell me if you don't feel some stage fright, you don't have the fire, the spark that makes a performance exciting. Now, I get it. What you don't want is debilitating stage fright, which I have experienced myself too, especially in the early days. I'll never forget, in college, we have to play for the whole class, something we're working on like once a week. So to get everybody together in the guitar program, you got all these students looking at you, and you got to play a piece. In the middle of the piece, I just forgot. Could not for the life of me remember where to go from there. I tried to get started, and I just had to admit defeat. It was so humiliating in front of my peers. But I have to say, it did 2 things. It somewhat desensitized me. I didn't want to repeat that experience, so I learned that I had to practice more than I thought I had to practice before playing in front of other people. So that brings me to the answer. The first step in overcoming stage fright is over-practicing how much you think you need to practice. Because what will happen is you can play fine by yourself, you get in front of people, you add the pressure of other people, you fumble, you get the cycle going in your head, and it freezes you up. So you want to over-practice so you don't start that whole cycle. when you get in front of somebody else. And the second part to this, and of course I'm abbreviating, I believe I have a blog post that goes into much more detail, is called desensitization. Oh, that's too big a word for me. Desensitize yourself to playing in front of people progressively. So, you know, everybody knows about this, how you get over the fear of like spiders or something. They have a whole system of, you know, having a glove and in a mask and everything and having a spider crawl on that. And then they put a thinner glove and have a spider get near the spider and then have the spider touch your hand. And I don't know all the details, but I'm afraid of spiders. That's why I thought of that. You start playing in a situation that's more stressful than by yourself, but not as stressful as playing in front of an audience of 100 people. How do you do that? Well, I found the tape recorder kind of provides that. Whenever I turn on the tape recorder, I don't know why I feel extra pressure, even by myself. And sure as heck, I'll play something perfectly. And I'll turn on the recorder, and first out of the gate, I'll screw it up. Well, fortunately, nobody's watching, so I know I got to stop, practice it some more, and then turn on the tape recorder again. It's great. And you can use your phone. I use the computer. You know, iPads have recorders now. You can get a specialized recorder, but to me, the phone is beautiful. It's with you, you know, you can play back. As a matter of fact, I'll encourage you to save what you record and consider it like a log of your progress. Store them somewhere and then go back and a month now and listen to where you started on that song and say, wow, I've gotten a lot better on that. The second step is, you know, I've tried to mirror. That seems to help. You know, it's kind of in there with the tape player. Maybe, you know, if you're going to play in front of other people, try a mirror and you see yourself. And just that act of seeing yourself makes a difference. But the next step, the more clear step, kind of a step, is get one other person. And preferably somebody who's going to be not critical. That you're not going to be terribly, you know, embarrassed in front of. For a lot of people, that's, you know, your spouse or a close friend. That's where a private teacher can be used, but you don't need a private teacher for that. That's just one option. Then, after that, a small group, preferably a casual group. I used to I would put myself in a situation where I play background music for cocktail parties. And that was much less stressful than playing for concerts. And that helped me desensitize till I could play in front of, you know, hundreds of people. And then, of course, you know, the more people, the more stranger they are, keeps going. The level keeps going. I don't know how far you want to go playing concerts or not, but you get the idea. Great question, Tim. Thanks for asking. This is Bauer, would you explain looping and how it is useful? And thanks, Bauer, for putting the cue there. I caught that right away. Looping is, for those who don't know, it's a little device. I don't have my looper handy, and I don't want to take time to go find it. But it's a little device that you plug your guitar into. Yeah, I'll say it, plug your guitar into. Acoustic, you use acoustic, electric, obviously, you plug it into. And then you plug it into an amplifier, and you play through it, you hear yourself, you press the button, and it records something that you're playing. Usually what I'll record, the best way to get started is I'll play a simple chord progression. And then you press the button again and it records that. Now it's playing this. I don't have to play. And now I can go through and jam over it. Well, I'd start by a simple scale. Okay, that wasn't so simple, but you get the idea. It's a good way to practice your improvisation and practice your scales. It's more fun, I think, than just practicing the scale by itself. And it's a step. You practice by yourself first, and then you play with the looping track. That's one use. I often use a looper to create songs. So I'll play a chord progression, record that, then I'll start playing, looking for a melody, and I'll spend hours, you know. And then I come up with a melody I like, and I'll record that. Now I can hear the melody and the chord progression together. Now I'll come up with a bass line. Let's say I did this progression. I'll usually play it on my guitar. And I'll record that. Now I got a little bass line going. I have a bass guitar, but it's just, you know, I'm kind of in a hurry, and I don't want to set up the bass guitar and all that and tune it up. And usually just to create the song, the guitar works just fine. And I like to, when I create a melody, I like to find a harmony for that melody. That's another fun. And I'll often play, another step is arpeggio. So I'll play a chord, and I'll play arpeggio record that chord. Arpeggio is a chord played one note at a time, and I'll play it in a different place. That was a G chord in a different place. So they kind of blend together, and it sounds cool. I have a lesson on this, and I'll put a link to it where I actually demonstrate what I just described. And it'll make more sense if you watch this video, because you'll see how I pad one on top of the other. It's a fun way to practice, because I can sit there with a looper for hours where it's really boring to sit there practicing all these things individually for an hour or two. With the looper, it's fun. It's creative. And Medeo asked for tips on writing songs. Well, what I just described with the looper is one tip. Just record a chord progression and create the melody over it. And when you get a melody that you like, record it so you can hear it. I often, by the way, this is a tip that I've learned the hard way. When you get an idea for a song, play it on your guitar and record it somewhere. So many times I thought I would remember. It was so obvious. And then 2 days later, I could not remember what I played. Another tip is when you come up with ideas for songs, record them and save them. Because a lot of times I'll create a song out of taking pieces of things I've recorded and putting them together, massaging a little bit, and that creates a song. Writers do this. They get ideas for phrases and paragraphs, and they have a notepad, and they write them down. And then, you know, little by little, they look over these each day, and they reform them and put them together. More tips on writing songs. Do a little every day. If you really want to write songs, this is something you really want to do, spend time at it each day, just as you would practicing your guitar. Have songwriting practice. Okay, that's all I can think of right now. I'm sure I would come up with some more tips, but that's certainly some of the more important ones. And then, yes, Lady Who Cares says Bauer did a lesson on looper, and I'll find that and put a link on the show notes. Again, the demonstrations, in this case, it speaks 1,000 words. What I described, it pales in comparison to just seeing me do it. Question. I have a Yamaha C40, costs about 160 bucks. I'm a beginner. Every time I play it, my fingers hurt. I don't know if it's because the strings are bad quality. No, this is natural. Your fingers always hurt when you learn. It's like when you go barefoot in the summer, or at least when I went barefoot in the summer, you know, the first day out, I felt every little grain of sand. But by the end of summer, I'm stepping on nails. And I look, oh, there's a nail on my foot. You just get desensitized. The way to get over it is just practice every day, 10 minutes. If you do too much, they hurt, and then you don't want to practice. So try to do it just where they start hurting. But you got to keep it up, because if you practice one day and say, oh, it hurts, I'll let it go 3 or 4 days, you just start over again. It doesn't work. Do a little bit every day and just keep at it. C40 is actually one of the easier guitars to practice. Steel string is a much harder guitar. C40, I believe, is a nylon string. At least it should be, unless somebody puts steel strings on. And that's a good point. Bauer says have the action lowered. A C40 is a nylon string, and it's actually pretty easy because the strings are softer, they're nylon, and they're fatter, so they don't dig into your fingers as hard. But an action adjustment on the guitar is almost always helpful, especially if you got the guitar used or if you had it for a long time. It really makes it a lot more fun to play. So that's a very good suggestion. Almost everybody could use an action adjustment on the guitar. If they're anything like me, you just put it out of your mind or wait too long. And then when you finally do it, you go, oh, I should have done this a year ago. David. Oh, he's just asking me a question. Do you finger pick, or do you also use a pick from time to time? I do use a pick from often, actually. and I fingerpick. I was told picks are good for soloing. That's exactly where I use it, in Spanish guitar. I use a pick. Well, let me show you. People, this is my flamenco guitar, my favorite. And I'll play something with my fingers. Then I'll grab my pick. And play a melody and then put the pick back. I have a little Velcro on there. That's what makes it stick. It's a little Velcro there and a little bit on my pick. It makes the pick stay in my fingers a little better too. So that works great for me. It's out of tune. So that was kind of embarrassing, but I don't want to take time to tune it right now. Question. Thank you for answering my question. Yes. And the suggestion for using cage, yes. That's just a good way to memorize the common keys for guitar. By the way, there is another way you can go up in fifths. Let's say you start with a C, C, D, E, F, G. That's up 5. G, G, A, B, C, D, G, A, B, C, D, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, A, B, C, D, E. That's another way. Cage is kind of quicker, huh? You're welcome, Lady Who Cares. Question, is there going to be a continuation of the Spanish guitar lessons? If there's enough call for it, yes. I got a lot more to say about Spanish guitar, but I don't want to make lessons that only, 3 people want to use. It took me 3 months after thinking about it for over a year. It took me 3 months of actual work to put that course together. And I'm talking, every day, like a work day. I would love to make a second more. And I really had to hold back because I know from experience, I made a course years and years ago, and I got a lot of feedback. It was just too complicated. I went too fast, too far. So I really tried to keep things step by step, concise on this course, and I would love to make a second version and take it from there. Please, people, let me know if you get through the first course and you want more. Great tips. You're welcome, Felix. Let me see. It looks like I've answered all the questions for today. I'm going to leave it on the last one in case you have a last-minute question. So let me say this. I normally would do a drawing for people who are in the Real Guitar Success program, and these are people who have completed the practice sessions. This goes back to me talking about doing for 10 minutes a day. You do each practice session each day, 5 days a week, and just spend 10 minutes and then check it off. Decide if you want to save it for later. You can always spend more time on it. It's not going away. But this just gives you a 10-minute exposure and gives you a feel for, how this lesson fits into your program. I'm giving you a chance to kind of massage and create your own program with a variety of techniques and skills and organized, each day it's a different category. Then when you have time, weekends, practice session, 10 minutes, let's say you have a half-hour practice session, 10 minutes on the practice session, you got 20 minutes left. Then you go back and decide which of your favorites you want to work on. And you might want to work on this particular one for the next 3 or 4 days, after you do your 10 minutes. And you keep collecting and putting in your favorites, the ones that you want to work on. So normally I do a drawing for people who have completed the lessons. It's just a game to make it kind of fun. But my software failed me today. I don't know what's wrong, but I'll figure it out. And I will do the drawing and send somebody a $50 Amazon gift card. Again, it's meant to be just to make it a little more fun and exciting. I know the real reward is learning and playing music. $50 pales in compared to that. But, it doesn't hurt to add a little excitement to it. Any last minute questions before I close up for today? It looks like not. It's been a pleasure being here today. Thank you for joining me. And I hope you can come back the next session, which is the first Thursday of every month. Boy, that's going to be the first Thursday in 2024. Can you believe it? Okay, let's brace ourselves and have lots of guitar playing fun in the meantime. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And I will put show notes, and I'll put the links I talked about in the show notes. It'll be out on Monday or Tuesday if you're not a member of Real Guitar Success. Bye for now. You're welcome, Larry. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the comments.